This was predicted by climate scientists first in the early 80s. My own Climate Council has produced 12 reports warning the government and warning people of the escalating fire risk and danger in Australia. And sadly, until it hits, very little is done.
Are you absolutely sure that this is climate change caused?
Yes, I'm absolutely certain. The science is telling us this. It's telling us that these extreme heat conditions we've seen this year might occur naturally once every 350 years. But once you add the influence of the human-emitted greenhouse gases, we're likely to see those conditions once every 8 years. And of course, that number will decline. It'll become more frequent as the build-up of gases continue.
That is the most esteemed climate scientist of Australia, Tim Flannery, who is telling you that, of course, it's all climate change in Australia. They've had this horrible series of brush fires. And this is the problem I have, folks. The way they structure the discussion about climate change, it's effectively unfalsifiable. Because, of course, the climate is a factor in this. Of course, the reality of dry tinder and of extreme heat conditions, the climate affects this. The other problem, though, is that Australia's had bushfires. I can say bushfire, same idea. Bushfires for a very long time. In fact, there was an excellent piece in the Wall Street Journal by somebody who's an Australian, who writes for the Australian Telegraph, talking about how this is, again, grossly oversimplifying what's really going on. It's the same thing. It's just a mirror image of what we see in California, where they all want, which, by the way, don't take too long of a shower there. But, by the way, there is a, series of policy decisions that have been made in California that have also been mirrored in Australia that have made conditions worse for these kinds of fires. I just want to know, why didn't Christiana Amanpour, who's on television and has had quite a career because she has the most pretentious accent I've ever heard in my life. It's like she's not from the UK. She's from the entire world. Why didn't she ask how climate change is responsible for the dozens and dozens of arrests of people who have set fires so that there will be worse brush fires? Australians are arresting people for these fires. The group that just looks at the cause of the fires, not that's like, because remember, this chief climatologist guy wants to be on TV, wants to ever, he gets to be the high priest of climatology in Australia right now. He gets to be the big kangaroo. Gets to be the guy that determines what the conversation will be on this issue, and everyone can either applaud him, because, CNN's audience, if you did a poll, I'm telling you, 95% of them are big climate change believers. Climate change, it's all so scary. Which, again, I just don't think it's just not possible to be that smart and really think the world's going to end because of CO2 emissions, and look at all the evidence and all the data that's been presented in the past and how wrong they are over and over again, and think that somehow we're all supposed to believe them this time. It's just not possible to be that smart and this to be the reality. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I'm not trying to be harsh about this. I'm not trying to harsh anyone's mellow. Here's the piece, though. I pulled it up in the Wall Street Journal. The Australia Daily Telegraph editor is this guy, Morrow. And he writes, the current round of blazes started late last year. It's charred 15 million acres, killed more than 2 dozen Australians. The climate change narrative grossly oversimplifies bushfires, whose causes are as complex as their recurrence is predictable. 1, Australia is in the midst of one of its regular droughts. You remember how I used to hear all the time about how we were going to, in this country, suffer worse hurricane seasons because of climate change? This was a big thing in like the earlier 2000s, maybe 2005, 2006, 2007. Oh, we're going to be hit, because Hurricane Katrina, right? We're going to be hit with these horrible, worse hurricane seasons than ever before. And then it went through like a 10-year period where we didn't have any catastrophic hurricanes on the scale that we had seen at other times in our history before CO2 emissions were such a scary thing. now we have people that are pretending that there's not a series of droughts that have been afflicting, or rather that cyclical droughts, not even series of droughts, cyclical droughts affect Australia. That's just the truth of what goes on there. He goes on, Byzantine environmental restrictions prevent landholders from clearing scrub, brush, and trees. State governments don't do their part to reduce the fuel load in parks. Last November, a former fire chief in Victoria slammed that state in Australia's minimalist approach to hazard reduction burning in the off-season. As for the proximate cause, anything from a lightning strike to a spark from a power tool to arson can touch off a conflagration. More than 180 people have been arrested for starting blazes since the current start of the current bushfire season. 180 people is a lot of people to be committing arson, right? That's in this way. That's not a couple. That's a lot. I was getting to this the other day. I said, what's the psychology, and I had the Michael Caine and Batman Begins. Some people just won't watch the world burn, that's his whole thing from the Batman Begins, In Burma, he had this great big ruby the size of a tangerine. I'm sorry, I like doing the Michael Caine accent. It's kind of fun. It's pretty good, too. Even producer Mark is chuckling a little bit over there. It's pretty. He says mezzo. But I'm saying it's pretty good. It's like, you should be a billionaire dating supermodels and going out to galas. And he tells him Bruce Wayne the whole thing. I'll be buying this hotel and setting some new rules for the pool area. Can we get an American to play Batman, though? I mean, Christian Bale is okay, but can we get an American to play Batman again? You know what I'm saying? They've got 007. Can we get anyway? 180 people that have set these fires. That's just who've been caught setting fires. Understand this. When you're looking at how many burglary arrests are made in an area, there's always more burglaries than burglary arrests. So if you got 180 people arrested for, and by the way, I think it's likely that a lot of people arrested for this, probably arrested for a reason. I'm not saying they're not innocent until proven guilty. I don't know how the Australian system works. But that means there's at least, you got to figure at least double that number. At least double that number have been human caused. Intentionally human caused. Remember, this is separating out all the people that just, they have a campfire in their backyard or something and an ember goes and lands in the brush somewhere and starts a huge fire, right? I mean, that's, which is unfortunate, but that's happening a lot more than anything else, I'm sure. Now, I was saying before about people just want to watch the world burn, and maybe that's, there's arson. Some people have this obsession with, fire and flames and everything else. But there is another possibility here. I'm not saying I have no proof of this. This is a theory. I am theorizing. Look, the media's been theorizing about how we're going to war for days now, and they're totally wrong. And they're never going to say it. I'm just theorizing about the mentality of the 180 people arrested at a time when, Australians are dying. Firefighters have died trying to deal with these fires. Just people caught up in the conflagrations have died, and a tremendous amount of animals. It's really sad. I mean, if you see the video, it is really sad. You see these videos, koalas and kangaroos and other things, and they get caught in the flames and they get burned to death. Why would anybody set a fire? Well, what if you thought that? This is a theory. What if you thought that the world really was going to end unless we got a handle on CO2? And what if you felt like these bushfires, which we just had the chief climatologist of Australia tell us definitely climate change caused. Climate change is going to end the world unless we take dramatic action. Fires all over Australia are being blamed on climate change. If you were a climate change true believer, if you really thought that the entirety of the human species was at risk unless we took dramatic action to combat climate change, whatever that means. By the way, Australia is responsible for about an 80th of the world's man-made carbon dioxide. Less than what is it? Call it less than 2%, like 1.2% maybe, or something like that. That's what Australia is responsible. That's what the Australian responsibility is. this is where in this piece he says, activists insist that if the government had an effective climate policy, it would help snuff out the flames. Never mind that Australia emits around 1/77th of the world's man-made carbon dioxide. The country's complete deindustrialization wouldn't budge the global thermostat. In radical corners of Australian social media, activists play out fantasies of the government's dissolution and replacement with some sort of revolutionary People's Climate Assembly taking power. On Monday, a parliamentarian from the Australian Greens tweeted about one day holding climate trials to deal with conservative politicians in Australia. It's an elected official who's like, we're going to hold trials for these people because they didn't do more. As if, and remember, if the Australian government said no more CO2, you can't do, which actually means you can't breathe, by the way. What do we breathe in? What do we breathe out? Right? This is the idiocy that we're dealing with here all the time. You're breathing in CO2, folks. You're a climate polluter. Your every breath is a climate polluting act. Oh my. And yet here we are now with people saying that there should be climate trials for those in Australia who don't do enough to combat this. What I was getting at before is if you really believe this, if you're one of these activists, if you're a true believer in climate change, would you maybe think that by trying to make the fires worse, the point would be stronger and therefore climate change would be combated to your satisfaction? Is it possible that any of this could be eco-terrorism, in a sense? Can't prove it. Not saying anyone's, but I don't know. I don't know why 180 people are lighting fires when there are fires raging out of control in their own home country. Unless there's some ideological reason behind at least some of it. Australia just happens to have a whole slew of people who are obsessed with starting fires, have some psychological disorder where they want to start fires, or maybe there's some other psychological disorder, climate change hysteria, that is somehow involved in this. Just putting it out there, folks.
When President Obama nominated Merrick Garland to be a Supreme Court justice, he had a year as a sitting president. And when Mitch McConnell just said, sorry, he's not getting a hearing, we're not even going to meet with him. The Constitution says the president will nominate.
That's right.
And the Senate will then offer its advice and consent. And you really want it in a confirmation. We never wrote it with the assumption that, you got to say within 30 days and then someone's got to come in.
That was unconstitutional.
Because the assumption was we would work together.
Senator, let's say this happens again. Let's say somebody on the Supreme Court retires or, God forbid, dies or anything. Can we say the same thing?
I don't think that's the approach we should be using here.
Well, listen,
we need to reestablish.
I know, but the way he did it was unconstitutional, and now we're just going to follow the law and get another conservative on the court.
Well, I don't think that's where we are. And look, I understand there's a difference if this happens in the last hour and a half of someone's presidency, that there are practical considerations. But President Obama he had a full year as president of the United States. And the notion that somehow a majority leader who was just willing to roll the dice that maybe he gets somebody from his party in on the Supreme Court, that he was willing just to violate every principle of how that Constitution is written.
What is she talking about? Violate every principle how? They had the votes. They didn't want to do it. They didn't do it. That's it. This is the system. This is a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about, whether it's on the impeachment issue or anything else. Democrats, the system is sacrosanct and cannot be touched unless the system doesn't give them what they want, and then it can be torn down at a moment's notice and completely remade in their image. And that's what happened here with the Merrick Garland thing. Yeah, we're going into an election year. I'm not going to give someone a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court when, the people get to speak about who gets to make that appointment in the next election. They can say there is no, the president will appoint and the Senate will. advise and consent. Yeah, it doesn't say what the timeline is. Oh, people will say, but Buck, why are you complaining about Nancy Pelosi and the not transmitting? I'm saying Nancy Pelosi doesn't have to transmit them. But Nancy Pelosi was the one who was saying that there was an urgency to do this in order to get it done. And now that she realized that it didn't really work the way they thought it would, people didn't come over to their side, now there's no urgency anymore. Mitch McConnell wasn't saying, oh, yeah, 100% we have to have a Obama appointee have an up or down vote this year for the Supreme Court. And then Merrick Garland goes, oh, no, I'm just kidding. We weren't. No. I mean, Democrats, whenever they speak of principle, I kind of want to laugh. I'm not even sure they know what principles are. I'm not even sure they know the definition of the word, or perhaps they think that they can, whenever they like, change the definition of the word. Maybe that's a better way of thinking about it. They're still so burned about Merrick Garland. You know, there's such an emotional investment that libs have in the Supreme Court. It's because much of what has become greatly internalized about about liberalism today, about leftists today, has to do with victories handed to them by the narrowest of majorities on the Supreme Court, and they don't want to deal with the possibility of the psychic damage, the emotional baggage that they would have to handle if all of a sudden the Supreme Court that had given them this, technically speaking, dispensation for whatever it is, whether it's for abortion or for any number of things, that could switch, and then all of a sudden they'd have to live in a world where there isn't some authoritative body that says you get to do this however you want, or you get it your way on this issue. They don't want to have to face that. They don't want to have to deal with that. But they're still so burned about the Merrick Garland thing. And that was a part of the rage, I think, that they had also unfairly and dishonorably, but directed at Brett Kavanaugh too. That they've convinced themselves that was stolen from them. It was never Merrick Garland's seat. Merrick Garland was never on. That didn't happen. And Obama said elections have consequences. That includes Senate elections. And give Mitch McConnell, I know I keep saying, you got to give Cocaine Mitch credit. He has put so many fantastic judges through. He's got this machinery of judicial confirmation just rolling along here. And, Harry Reid opened the door and Mitch McConnell kicked it down and walked right through it. Because he says, all right, you guys are going to play rough. We're going to play rough too. And God bless him for it. And it was a gamble. Remember, we thought that maybe they're going to, Hillary was going to win. They give us some Ruth Bader Ginsburg clone. But nope. Instead, we get Kavanaugh. Well, I got some news here for producer Mark. He is not yet aware of. Producer Mark, I will have you know that according to a recent survey, because you are a clean-shaven fellow.
Yes,
right? And
unless I'm lazy.
I have joined the ranks of the bearded, which I even got a shout-out from Senator Ted Cruz himself, where he said he was happy to see that I had joined the bearded fam. But you are a clean-shaven fellow. There's a recent study that says that 75% of male respondents to this survey feel more confident with facial hair, beards in particular. What do we think? What would it take? Confident man. What would it take to get producer Mark to cross this threshold and join the bearded ranks?
Better genetics.
You can't beard?
I can't grow a beard.
No way! Come on.
This is like a week since I've last shaved, and you can barely see anything.
Ah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't grow a particularly thick, bushy beard.
But it's at least noticeable.
It's a beard. Yeah.
If I keep growing this out, it'll look ridiculous.
Yeah, some people are just very blessed to have, I don't understand. I get so much. I have too much hair up top.
Yes.
I don't understand why it's not. I got to get more down here. I got to do like the reverse of what people do.
Isn't that a good thing though? You don't have to trim constantly. Like, do you even trim that at all?
Like once a week.
Exactly.
Yeah, once a week. So, but we've entered an era here of the bearded men in America because beards it's just exploded in popularity. I didn't really think about it. I just kind of woke up and stopped shaving for a while. probably when a previous romantic relationship had ended about a year or so ago. So, that I think, was a beard that just kind of happened. But, when you look back at photos of America at different periods in history, there are phases where pretty much everybody has a mustache and then everybody has a beard. And, it really is, it is like a fashion-driven thing. It's funny. I mean, if you go to some country in the Middle East, for example, everybody will have the same kind of mustache. Like all the guys have a mustache. And some other places, they have a beard. Turkey, Syria, a lot of mustaches in those places. Everyone has mustaches.
What America had in the 90s?
No, that was kind of like a hipster stash. Like that's a different thing. I'm talking about like the Ataturk, the like, hey, like I've got
yes.
And then you go through different places, different phases. Mutton chops. Somebody gets the really thick mutton chops. You tend to think of, I don't know if that's like a roughly, 1870s, 1880s. You look at old-timey boxers, and those prints people see.
Yes.
They'll have the sort of the waxed mustache. There's really, somebody should do a history of American facial hair is what I'm getting at.
I'm sure somebody has done that before.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Well, it would take a quick Google search and we would find it, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's, it feels like at the time of the founding, you didn't really have a lot of facial hair. You think about all the American, Franklin, Washington, Hamilton, clean-shaven guys.
Yeah.
But they wore those powdered wigs, which when you think about that, that's a bizarre. I know we took it from the Brits or whatever, but it's bizarre for them. That's a weird.
Did they have hair under those?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but they
I
just
don't think
wore
I've ever
these,
seen a picture of George Washington.
They wore these powdered wigs.
Weird.
It's a very weird deal. Yeah.
I'm glad that stopped.
And also the breeches with the socks back in the colonial times, that doesn't look like it's super comfortable.
They just had odd clothing back then.
Yeah. Yeah, I told a friend of mine recently, a lady friend who's into fashion. I said, let's say this right now: super high waisted jeans, like jeans above the belly button. I don't care if it's fashionable. No,
I thought that was fashionable for females, not males.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
but even for females, like no, too high. It's the
who
Jerry
cares?
It's the Jerry Nadler of jeans.
That's true.
It doesn't need to happen. I
Why
gotta
do you care what females wear? Like,
why do I care what females wear? Do you know me?
I mean, that's a fair point, but like,
Yeah.
like if your girlfriend, not that you have one, is wearing high-waisted jeans, you're gonna tell her stop? Like, why? Who cares?
Yeah, be like, get some normal jeans.
Does it really bother you that much?
I mean, I'm just trying to be helpful. I'm
right.
trying to be a little bit of a style coach here.
Like, I just look at that stuff. I'm like, I don't care.
You know what else is? I know this is very fashionable right now for the hip fashionable ladies is wearing like kind of like fedora hats. If you're a woman, I'm seeing a lot more of this.
I'm seeing that from males too.
No, it's not a good look.
One of my friends.
I know it's fashionable now, but it's not. It's just not a good look. It's kind of like gaucho pants. Remember those things that women wore for a while, which like the super like baggy, almost like MC Hammer pants, but cut off at the calves. Nobody looks good in those. That was never a good idea.
It was a trend.
It was a trend.
Yeah.
It was a bad one.
One of my groomsmen's wearing a fedora a lot, like in social settings, because he's going bald.
Well, that's a little, you gotta give some leeway for people that want to, yeah, I get that. But I'm saying a lot of ladies you'll see now, and they're walking around with, we want to see your hair. We don't want to see a hat. I'm just saying, this is like indoor hats. I'm not talking about outdoor when your head is cold. That's different. Indoor hats, no.
I'm wearing a hat right now.
For ladies, I don't care what you wear.
No.
You wear whatever you want. You're producer Mark.
I don't care what anyone wears. Whatever you're comfortable
I think people like Buck keep it away from the fashion commentary.
Exactly.
Somebody accused me of wearing 4 buttons down yesterday on Outnumbered. Only 3. And no one wears. Can you imagine if I went up there?
That's a lot of buttons down, even 3.
Yeah, but like, could you imagine if I did the, you sit there and you do the.
Oh no, you never go full button.
The top button only.
No.
You know who used to do top button only? My old boss, Glenn Beck, loved to
without
go
a tie.
Yes.
Oh,
he loved to do like
pas.
work shirt, no tie, which to me is I don't know. Looks like
I go whenever I have to wear an actual shirt. I go 2 buttons usually. Top button open and the first one open.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Wait, so that's what
No, you went to third button.
No,
You're
I didn't go third. No, it was double button. It was not third button.
No, you had a third button just now.
No,
we
just
have
now.
you on camera.
All right. Yeah, no, yesterday on that number, I was accused of going third button, not fourth.
Okay.
Fourth button is like, that's X-rated. That gets crazy.
I can't believe you did that on television. 3 buttons?
Yeah, 3 buttons on TV.
If you had a little more chest hair, it would have been noticeable.
Yeah, well, see, the thing is, like, I'm just not a prickly, hairy guy. I don't have hair on the face. I have hair on the chest. It is
you
what
have
it
hair
is.
on your head.
It all went up top. What can I tell you? It all migrated to the dome. And with that, roll call.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call, everybody in the house. House. What do we got here? Show kind of flew by today, I gotta say. I always love, producer Mark, when people ask me, they're always like, when I tell them to do a 3-hour radio show, they're like, how many guests do you have on? And I'm always like, basically none.
Yeah.
And then they're always like, how much of it is written for you beforehand? And I'm like, 0. Yeah. And then they're like, well, I said, how many calls do you take to it? I'm like, we do roll call. We don't really take we don't take phone calls. That's like, yesterday somebody didn't like one of my tweets, some lib. So he tweeted out to all of his followers, this is this guy's phone number for his show. Flood the calls with like F-bombs and stuff, whatever. And I was like, joke's on you.
Have
fun sitting on have fun calling the, it's going to ring a lot. I can tell you that.
And by the way, that's not a poor producing that we don't have a lot of guests. You just never asked for any.
Yeah, correct. Right.
Yeah.
I want to talk.
A lot of people say, oh, producer Mark, do your job, get some guests. No, you don't want any.
If you want it, there are other shows. They always tweet out, oh, we got a great lineup of like 8 different guests on radio. I'm like, why? You listen to the host, he talks to you about the things. If you want to listen to all these different guests, that's what, turn on any cable news program. It's just host, guests. Like, that's what it is.
And 75% of conservative people have a podcast now, media.
Yeah.
So what do we need them on?
Yeah, exactly. If you want to hear them, listen to their podcast with hundreds of listeners.
With
maybe.
Muppets.
But producer Mark is he's our daily guest. Producer Mark is the voice. He's the Vox Populi. He's the voice of Team Buck. So important things. All right, let's get to roll call, which I know is the segment we're doing, and I should probably get really into that. Glenn writes, we need a list of everyone on that airplane to determine if anyone would benefit from their death. Maybe the airplane was the target and the missiles were a distraction. Glenn, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there right now, man. I don't have anything for you other than just, we don't know yet. I just don't know. We don't know. I'm not an aviation disaster expert. As I said, it is certainly suspicious. Ciara writes, I am writing this on behalf of Russia TV, which is broadcast internationally. I'm a producer. We want to have you on. Thank you so much, Ciara. Ciara, sorry, I didn't mean to read a media request on air, but that just kind of happened. I do not do Russia TV. I don't do it now. I didn't do it then. I've never done it. But thank you very much for the request. Here we go. Joanne writes, a word of encouragement. I'm looking at my phone every day around 3 awaiting your podcast release. You're so good at explaining the unexplainable. I'm a 74-year-old grandmother, and I learn from you every day. Thanks for being there for us. I try to get at least one new listener per week. Love the show. Well, Joanne, we love you. That is so kind of you. Thank you. I'm really humbled and super pleased that you anticipate the show every day going up on podcast at 3 Eastern. And please, if you haven't already, check us out on Pluto TV, channel 248, the first. I got it right? Yeah. Okay, just making sure. I'm really paranoid. I don't want to upset our partners over at Pluto TV. And telling people about the show is a huge help, and it makes us grow our numbers, which is going to keep the Freedom Hut employed, hopefully far, far into the future, if you keep doing that. So thank you very much. It means a lot. Brad writes, why aren't you talking about what's going on in Virginia right now? Brad, I mean, yesterday I talked about it at length. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. You sent this last night, so I don't know why you would think that I wasn't talking about it. Maybe listen to the podcast, my man. I talked to you about what's going on in the states and Democrats and all the things that they're doing. Kristen writes, hey, Buck, Original Saturday Squad, OSS here. My husband and I are both regular followers and appreciate your analysis and well-placed sarcasm, as well as your sense of humor. After 8 years, you feel like a friend we just haven't yet met face-to-face. Well, Kristen, I feel the same way about people who have been with me here for years on listening to the show. A quick point of interest and a serious question. When I recently asked my teenage son about his only wearing socks with Birkenstocks, I was informed it's currently the only acceptable way to wear them. Wow, a fashion call out here on the show after we just talked about some stuff like this before. So there's that. I didn't know that. Apparently Birkenstocks and socks are back in fashion. On a serious note, I've read a couple of articles on Fox News in recent days about reactions to the Soleimani airstrike in Syria. Could you please explain how this affects Syria and possible repercussions to the U.S.? And the Russian-backed versus Iranian-backed factions there. Thanks for all you do, Kristen. Kristen, I think that's going to have to require more of a Syria deep dive into the different factions that are there and what's going on in that country right now. So I will have to put a pin in that for a moment. But, someone pointed this out. We didn't play this before. Here we go. John writes, Buck, Rush mentioned you in his morning show in the opening monologue. Great job. Team Buck has your back. Here, producer Mark, play it. Wait, you don't have it? Wait, what? We have the Rush. Hold on. All right, he's gonna play it. Groucho Mark over here, getting all mad at me. I'm just trying to give the audience. I try to give Team Buck what they want when they want it. I'm the one who delivers. It's like we got the parents are a good cop, bad cop. Team Buck, I always want to make you happy. Producer Mark is the one who tells you sometimes no Oreos before bed. That's the truth. Do we have this one? Yeah.
The media going wall-to-wall coverage of the funeral. We're getting to see all of the supposed mourners. Now, Buck Sexton, CIA analyst, former guest host of this program, was just on Fox, and he said what I told you yesterday. The regime goes door to door to ask you if you are going to the funeral, and if you say no, they leave your head in the house and take your body to the funeral.
Always nice to get a shout out from the big guy, the man himself, the godfather of this whole medium, this whole business, this whole industry of talk radio, Mr. Rush Limbaugh, the guy, the one and only. So that was nice on the EIB yesterday. It's always cool. Appreciate the shout out from Rush. That was when I was on Outnumbered yesterday, which I'm sure you can probably, if you want it. I mean, Well, actually, it'd be fun to go back for some of you, I think, and watch it, because everything that I said was, even now in retrospect, even more wise and astute than it sounded at the time, now that we know more of what's going on in the Mideast. So there's that. Let's see here. Meg writes, Buck, are you on TV tonight? Need info. Not these random talking heads. Well, Meg, I wasn't on TV last night. I was on during the day, during Outnumbered, but I didn't get on any of the shows of nighttime shows to talk about this stuff, which is the deal, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Let's see here. Eric, hey, Buck, love your show. It's my favorite way for people to start emails into me. Love your show. In regards to the recent Iran situation, let's play devil's advocate. What's the difference from Iran's proxy militants and the U.S. providing weapons to militant groups to kill and overthrow governments outside of U.S. borders? Well, Eric, it all depends on, it all depends on the situation. I mean, you're giving me no specifics here. U.S. providing weapons to militant groups to kill and overthrow governments outside the U.S. borders. Who are we talking about here? And this is where at some point you get into, America is good and other places are bad. I mean, that's just something that's true. But I need more than just the vague, if the international community all agrees that, for example, a group is a terrorist group and you're arming that terrorist group, that's a problem, I would think. And also, some things are just right, even if it's not a function of international law or not. Mike writes, Buck, glad you're back, and producer Mark is back in the Freedom Hut. Hope you had a good Christmas and birthday. Anyway, just suggesting a guest to have on the show, Patrick Moore, the ex-Greenpeace guy that left the Green movement when he saw how corrupt and fraudulent it was becoming. He has a lot of insight and common sense when it comes to climate hysteria, so his voice would be a breath of fresh air on this issue that's gotten totally out of hand. Who knows if you've been to a radio review, but it might be worth a shot. Shields high. Well, Mike, maybe. I mean, once we get a little more of our tech set up in here, we'll be able to take guests on video, and that then means that we can also have them on Pluto TV. You'll be able to see the guests, and when that is happening, there will be good things. Also, when we have our YouTube channel up and running, which is just taking a little bit of time on my end. Don't blame producer Mark. This is my fault. Although he is the one that tells you no cookies before bed. As in, Buck can't just, play clips that don't exist yet in our system. He's the one that gets to present you with that.
Yeah, exactly. That's my fault.
Yeah, I get to just pull the fantasy, clips and say, hey, play that speech we have of Churchill from whatever, and he's like, we don't have it, Buck.
Play this clip from 6 months ago, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll just appear out of thin air.
See? No Oreos before bed, kids. This is his job.
I'm on a diet after all.
How's it going, by the way?
Terrible. I'm so hungry.
I'm hungry dude. I'm hungry, and I'm not even on a diet.
I'm basically only drinking 2 protein shakes a day and 1 meal a day. It's not good.
I hear you. Well, team, that's going to be the show for today. We'll have more for you tomorrow, as we always do. Thank you so much for being here. Spread the word, pass the buck, and of course, shields high.